on the John Fredericks Radio Network. Joining us now, Brigadier General, retired Robert Spalding. General, great to have you back, sir.
Great, thank you. Great to be back.
General, I'm going to start with a clip because the book that you published is unbelievable. You can't advertise it on Facebook. The censorship now off the charts when you're advertising product now because they don't agree with the thesis of it. Let's go here for the general care. Let's get the cut two. Here's Trump yesterday. He said the New York Times has just published an entire story on Biden's China sellouts. Cut two. I want to get the general's reaction.
The New York Times has just published an entire story on Biden's China sellouts, which is amazing for the New York Times. I appreciate that. In 2001, Biden said the United States welcomes the emergence of a prosperous, integrated China on the global stage because we expect this is going to be a China that plays by the rules. They didn't play by the rules. They didn't play by the rules. The World Trade Organization, one of the reasons it's so bad is that China didn't play by the rules. We did, but their rules were easier because they're considered a developing nation. So they had a much lower standard. But even that, they didn't play by the rules. That's when they became a rocket ship.
This was the president, again, blasting China. General Spalding, you've written a book that you tried to advertise on Facebook, right? It's a normal thing to do. You write a book, you try to promote it. They wouldn't let you advertise it. What? Are you kidding me, General?
No, I'm not. I think the challenge is when you write something about the Chinese Communist Party in the United States, it's considered political speech, which is part of the problem because the Chinese Communist Party practiced political warfare against our own democracy. And so in trying to respond against, what they try to do, I've been blocked from advertising the book.
So your book, Stealth War, How China Took Over While America's Elite Slept, you're trying to advertise it on social media and they shut it down because they don't like the thesis of your book. I mean, it's like, okay, so if somebody else wrote a book that said, hey, the CCP, great job for lifting up the Chinese people out of poverty, like that, you could advertise that?
I would imagine so. I haven't written a book like that, but
because it would be a lie, but yeah, basically.
Exactly.
Where are we going with this, General? I mean, you got Facebook now saying that they're not going to allow anybody to post on Facebook, that any of the states have been called, that the election's not going to be determined on November 3rd. I mean, why are the big tech companies now getting everybody accustomed to this narrative that there's no, it's going to be election month or election 2 weeks. It's not going to be election day. How do they have the power to just basically say anybody that posts anything about the election and who won what, we're not going to put it up? How do they have this power?
Well, Silicon Valley built the capability to influence. That's what's in their technology. That's what's in their business models. What happened was the authoritarians figured out how to use it, not just for economic gain, but also social and political gain. And so they were the first to build, in China, the Great Firewall. The Russians have figured out how to disconnect their internet from the global internet. And so the authoritarians were the first to figure out that this is also a weapon. It's a weapon against societies. It's a weapon against democracies. And, we have been focused on bombs and bullets. And what I tried to say in my book is that the weapons of the 21st century are economic, financial, and they're informational. They're meant to influence at the individual level. Armies and air forces were made to conquer societies so that you could impose your will on the population. You no longer need that anymore. You can impose your will on the population today through these tools that Silicon Valley built. And that's what the Chinese and the Russians and many of the other authoritarians figured out. Clinton said you can't nail Jello to the wall, meaning you can't control the internet. And what the Chinese and the Russians figured out was how to do that. And so I think we have to understand that these are weapons. They're not just good. They don't just create democracy. That was what we were considered, that they would promote democracy. They're actually used as weapons to influence democracies away from their values and principles.
We're with retired Brigadier General Robert Spalding. He's the author of the book, How China Took Over While America's Elite Slept. It's Stealth War. You can get it on Amazon. He can't advertise it because Facebook and the other tech companies took it down because they simply don't agree with the thesis of his book, which is still incomprehensible to me, General, that you can't advertise your book on Facebook because they don't like your book. I mean, you were a brigadier general. You're a retired general. It's not like you're some crackpot. You're a general in the U.S. military, having written a book, studied the area, and they won't let you advertise it. And again, the fake news says nothing about it, right? They just ignore it. If you hadn't been on this show and a couple others, no one would even have any idea that they did this. That's the shame of it all, General. All right, well, let's get to the talking of fake news, General. Let's get to the story in the Atlantic that comes out on Friday. By the way, oddly enough, it comes out on Friday, the day that the president had a great jobs report number. So that took that out of the headlines with the fake news. An hour after the story came out, the DNC had ads up. That was, boy, those guys work fast. They had video ads up within a couple hours of the story breaking. They lightning fast people, right? That's no coincidence either, so it was coordinated. Now you've got 15 people, including John Bolton and Fuentes, the chief of staff for your former colleague General Kelly, saying he didn't say it. 4 people who said he did. None of them verified his firsthand accounts, yet the mainstream fake news media goes with it as if it's fact. What do you make of this, sir?
No, it was an information op. I mean, you could tell that right off the bat. It's 60 days prior to the campaign. It's a 2008, supposedly happened in 2018. 4 anonymous, sources. The whole thing was set up. It was completely set up, and so you can see that right away. And I think that's part of the problem. What I've tried to explain is that the media now can be used as a weapon. Now it can be used as a political weapon within our own country. It's being used as a political weapon, from outside our country. In this case, the Chinese don't want to see the president reelected. So while this is going to be from the Democratic Party in this case, what you find is that, that you have some strange bedfellows. You have the Chinese Communist Party and the Democratic Party both want to see Trump not reelected. So in this case, you get a double whammy.
So do you have any doubt in your mind that it's completely fake?
No, it's completely false. It was made up. It was made up to attack the president so that, he could reduce his turnout among veterans.
Right. And the fact that 15 people that were there with him have disputed it, including John Kelly's chief of staff, including John Bolton, obviously no ally of President Trump. And even, Bolton said on Sunday he never heard the president say that, uttered those words at any time. But so you have 15 people on the record saying he didn't say it. You have 4 people, unnamed sources, off the record saying he did. None of those 4 were actually verified to have been there. I've heard from others that it's basically secondhand information. So how do you run with a story where 15 people that were there say it didn't happen, and the only 4 that said it happened will not go public with it? How do you defend that, General Spalding?
Again, this is war. This is the way war is fought in the 21st century. The Russian collusion story was completely false, made up. They almost impeached actually, they did impeach the president over it. Mm-hmm. And, and China has, essentially said the coronavirus came from the United States. And then they said it came from Spain. In the 21st century, because we have allowed these systems to grow up, the internet, the app services and business models surrounding it, that allow you to make the reality whatever you want it to be, without having the capacity to understand where the truth lies. It is really a dangerous weapon for democracies, and I think we have to recognize this. We spend $800 billion a year in this country on defense, and we don't protect the internet. That's what I've been trying to tell people. That's why security in the internet is so important for maintaining and preserving our republic. But, we'll spend $1 trillion on F-35s, which won't work against China because the distances are too far. But we won't spend a dime to protect our own population from outside influence.
So what would you do when you say spend money and resources to protect the internet? Like, give me an example of what you mean by that, General.
Well, so first of all, I think our internet, should be encrypted, and your data should be secured by a key that you own. I think that is a critical aspect of democracy. It enables you to restore the balance between you and the government. The whole idea of the Second Amendment is to give the citizenry the ability to preserve or to protect if the government becomes oppressive. But in a world where you don't know you're being oppressed or who the oppressor is, the gun in that world becomes much less relevant. You can't, if you don't know what reality is, because in these systems today, you can be encouraged or influenced without knowing, what the truth is. That's the whole point. So you have to secure, you have to lock down, you have to protect data. That's encryption. The other thing that we need, and this is what the federal government already does for its own systems, particularly the military, is they monitor attacks and they protect their systems. They don't protect the internet. They just protect their own networks. And what I've been saying is we need to build a secure 5G network because that's the new, that's the advance for automation and autonomy, for industrial 4.0, for advanced manufacturing. And we need to give that to the citizenry, and we need to protect it. Just like we have an Air Force and Army, we need to protect that from attacks, and we need to understand when the Chinese or the Russians are trying to influence our population from the outside. In doing so, if you just in the protection of data alone, you save $300 to $600 billion in loss of intellectual property a year. Mm-hmm. So think about that. It probably cost you $50 billion to build a nationwide network. By the way, we're spending $1 trillion for F-35s, and you save to $300 to $600 billion in intellectual property theft a year. So these are not, crazy numbers, but it would be incredibly valuable to the nation to do this.
Why don't they do it? Why don't we do it?
Well, because the truth of the matter is that when you go to D.C. and you have these discussions, they say, well, AT&T's got it or Verizon's got it. And you say, well, AT&T and Verizon are private companies. The CEOs don't respond to the national security of the United States. They respond to providing value for their shareholder. So what we're talking about is an added cost to their work to protect the network, to secure it, to encrypt it. Well, that's where we're at today. We believe falsely that the money that we spend on defense are going to protect our population, when in reality the Chinese have just figured, why do I need to fight America, with ships and planes and tanks when I can go over and influence their population away from democracy? I mean, you see the rise of Marxism. This is all consistent with this changing way of war.
General Spalding with us, retired Brigadier General Robert Spalding, the author of one of the best books written on China, Stealth War, How China Took Over While America's Elite Slept. You can get that on Amazon or your favorite bookstore. Stealth War, General Robert Spalding. Let's get to the Integrity Transition Project, where pretty well-known people are gaming out a scenario that the 82nd Airborne removes President Trump from office after the election if they can't determine a winner based on mail-in ballots. I can't believe I'm even asking this question. For 2 weeks, I wouldn't even talk about this because it just seemed like, far-fetched conspiracy stuff. But now you've got reasonable people engaged in it. What am I missing here, General? Tell me.
Well, reasonable people, but what's the truth? Where does the truth lie? in the end, when the truth is what you can make it to be, then these scenarios become more and more plausible. So, I mean, when I say that it is warfare, it is. I'm not saying that lightly. I mean, I've spent 27 years in the military. I was a B-2 pilot. I know what warfare is. It is a different form of warfare, and it's a warfare that doesn't require you to physically harm anybody in order to. There's Rand Waltzman's a great. He's a great thinker in this space, in the disinformation space. And, he has a scenario where you use social media to assassinate somebody. And so, it is a scenario where you influence somebody to go after somebody else because they're convinced that they're the boogeyman. And we see this on social media all the time, this encouragement, this incitement to violence. Well, this is what the tools that we have given society. So, it may be that, BLM and Antifa protests are legitimate. It may be that they've been incited by an outside party. That's what we have to understand.
Unbelievable. General, thank you for being with us. I can't believe you can't even advertise your book on Facebook or the other tech companies because they don't like the thesis of the book. I don't know where we're headed with this, but I think you're spot on. We're in a real information war. Thank you, General Spalding. Thanks for being with us early today on this Tuesday. Get his book, Stealth War, Robert Spalding, How China Took Over While America's Elite Slept, and they're still sleeping. General, thank you for being with us.
Thank you.